All right, the Democratic National Convention enters its fourth and final day with Vice President Kamala Harris all set to formally accept the party's presidential nomination in Chicago. Harris has electrified the Democrats, wiping out Trump's poll lead in the space of a single month since President Joe Biden dropped out of the contest. A recent compilation of national polls by 538, which is a polling website, show Harris leading Trump by 47.2% to 43.6%. Before Harris takes the stage, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, civil rights leader Al Sharpton will ascend to the podium. Now, the theme of the finale is For Our Future. Now, in her speech, Harris is widely expected to offer her vision and policy agenda to the American people.
Indivisible and justice for all.
California in the United States Senate.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump continued his policy-based and personal attacks on Harris. Now, on a tour of the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona, Trump targeted Harris over immigration, calling her a border czar. He recounted stories of people he said were killed by migrants who had come across the border illegally and claimed Harris will not address the issue in her speech today.
As Kamala gives her convention speech tonight, she will not mention the victims. She won't even talk about them, although now that she sees us, maybe she will. She'll not say their names or express remorse to their families. Kamala says she wants to talk about the future. No, these people want to go back to the safe past. We don't have a future with open borders and all of the other problems this country has.
All right, for more on this, we also have us joining Voice of America correspondent Kane Fermo joining us from DNC Center in Chicago. We also have our correspondent Susan Tadani. Now, great to see you both. Kane, I'll start with you. Big night for Democrats and certainly a big night for Kamala Harris. First, tell us how the mood is on the ground.
Here is honestly electric. This is the night it seems that everybody is packing the United Center to get in on the floor, because there is obviously going to be the moment of Vice President Kamala Harris addressing this crowd size, the delegates that have assembled here, the thousands that have actually come to hear her accept this nomination. But it's also a chance for her to reach the American people and answer some of the questions that we just heard Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump, addressing. It's going to be her opportunity to reach that audience, to explain some of her policy positions, to explain how she's going to perhaps address border security, to also explain how she's going to tackle some of the economic concerns that American voters have. But the mood here is honestly electric. There is obviously on the floor a lot of people cheering, a lot of people dancing. There was a DJ playing some music. It's not just Vice President Kamala Harris tonight on the agenda. There's also going to be former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's going to speak. Also, there are some performers. The Chicks, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, just performed the national anthem, and there's going to be some other musical performers tonight. Pink is slated to appear here as one of the performers, and there is also the buzz about a surprise special guest happening here. We'll have to see what happens here in the coming hours.
All right, well, that certainly looks surprising. But now, as you mentioned, now this is just weeks. Kamala Harris has had just weeks to prepare for this. Now, what are the Democrats expecting from Kamala Harris tonight?
Well, she honestly has to sort of outline some positions. She's going to have to explain to not just these people here on the floor or assembled here at the United Center, really what happens here, especially once this convention concludes, is Kamala Harris will have to get out on the campaign trail and use the time she has between the end of this convention and November 5th, which is Election Day, to make sure that she is expressing her ideas and her solutions to the problems that Americans feel that exist. Some of the things that we talked about earlier is border security, high interest rates, which have, created by high inflation. Also, people are concerned, especially the protests that people perhaps have seen here at this convention about the war in Gaza. These are all positions in which Kamala Harris will need to sort of explain those positions to the American voter. Something I would just want to make sure that we all keep in mind here, too. It's not just November 5th. Voting begins in some states by early ballots in September.
Right. Exactly. Now, I'll go to, just stay with us, Kane. Of course, we have Susan also joining us from New York. Now, we just talked about with Kane about the issues that she's going to be talking about. This is a very closely watched speech of her political career. Lots of things to cover up. Kane also mentioned immigration. Now, Trump has claimed that she will not be addressing the issue. What are you expecting?
Clearly be addressing some of these things. Actually, she's already addressed some of the concerns that he's indicated that she hasn't. During this convention, there's been a few interesting pre-produced videos that have been displayed to the convention goers here, not only explaining her background, but there's also been a couple of videos that have explained that she was supportive of the bipartisan border security measures that were presented, in which she's accusing former President Donald Trump of ensuring didn't get passed. There is an opportunity that she's been taking and the campaign here, the Harris-Walz campaign has been taking to make sure that they're countering some of the information that's being put out there. They are trying to make sure that they're, using this convention to express some of those policy positions. But, this campaign has hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on advertising in the coming weeks and months. And so there's going to be a lot of this filtering out, not just in the campaign appearances, but also on commercial advertisements, social media feeds. It's going to be an inundation of messaging like this in the coming weeks.
All right, Kane. Now, I'll be getting to you, Susan. I guess we just messed up. Kane did answer that. Of course, I'll be asking you as well. He did pick up, there are, of course, international issues. Kane told us about, of course, there are protests going on. How are we looking at Harris addressing the foreign policies?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Kane mentioned the war in Gaza, which really has been a cornerstone, at least outside of the premise of this Democratic convention. There were reports earlier today that Palestinian Americans that are pro-ceasefire, pro-Gaza, they had hoped to have a place on that stage tonight. And that was sort of either denied or it didn't happen. The Harris campaign didn't want that to happen. So there's a little bit of a disappointment on that front. But nonetheless, with possible peace talks happening in Cairo this week and the U.S. ambassador to the UN saying that we're closer to a negotiation, this will really be a foreign policy win, not only for President Biden, but by extension, Vice President Kamala Harris as well. Is she going to address the issue of Gaza, the war there? Well, President Biden did, and it's hard to imagine that Vice President Harris won't. Remember, there are a lot of Gaza supporters, Palestinian supporters, not only in Michigan, but in a lot of swing states as well.
Right, Susan. And Susan, Kane, both of you, this is a question to both of you. Now, we've seen a lot of speakers in the past few days talk about Trump attacking. Do we expect the same from Kamala Harris as well? Now, the Harris campaign has been displaying sharp elbows at Trump. What do you expect today? You start with Susan. Can you go first?
Already seen some excerpts of Vice President Kamala Harris's speech, so we know that's she's obviously going to use some of that messaging.
Susan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And considering the fact that a lot of the speakers, almost all of them, have targeted the former president, it's hard to imagine that Kamala Harris won't take that opportunity as well.
Well, thank you to both of you for joining us and giving us the latest. Of course, we'll be tracking more.